Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. A silent boat glides across a dark river. Mist coils around its wooden frame. A single coin glints on your tongue. On the shore, a figure cloaked in shadows waits with an outstretched hand. This isn't a fantasy novel. This is what the ancient Greeks believed happened when you died. To them, death wasn't just an end. It was a journey, a test, a story. The underworld wasn't hellfire and brimstone. It was a realm ruled by gods, guarded by monsters, and navigated by souls just like yours. Heroes, cowards, poets, and kings, they all passed through the same gates. But how did the Greeks come to believe this? And what does their view of death tell us about how they lived? Today, we descend into the myths, mysteries, and morals of the underworld, Greece's strangest and most haunting legacy. Where death became a destination. When the ancient Greeks looked at the night sky or stepped into a temple, they didn't just see stars and marble. They saw signs of what waited after life. Death, to them, wasn't an end. It was a journey, a crossing, and most importantly, it had a place, a real, imagined, and terrifying world beneath the earth called the Underworld. Before their ideas became mythology, death was already a part of Greek culture. Long before Homer sang of heroes or Plato taught in the academy, Greeks buried their dead with care. Mounds of earth, bronze tools, pottery, and even gold masks. These weren't just grave goods. They were messages. Messages that said, we remember. We prepare. We believe something comes next. Early stories from the Mycenaean period already hinted at an afterlife. Tombs from around 1400 BCE show us that people believed the dead needed tools, food, and riches in the next world. But it wasn't until the great epics like the Iliad and the Odyssey that the underworld became a fully imagined realm. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus sails to the edge of the world to speak with the dead. He digs a trench, pours in milk, honey, and blood, and suddenly ghosts arrive. It's chilling. The dead appear thin, voiceless, almost forgotten. Even Achilles, the greatest warrior of them all, says he'd rather be a poor farmer alive than a king among the dead. This wasn't a glorious place. It was gray. It was empty. But myths evolved, and by the time of Hesiod and later tragedians, the underworld grew in detail. It became a place with rules, borders, judges, and even rewards. Now, it wasn't just where the dead went. It was where your soul's fate was decided. Religious cults, such as the Orphics, offered secret teachings. They believed that the soul was trapped in the body like a prisoner, and death offered escape. But only if you lived well. Only if you remembered who you truly were. For them, the underworld wasn't a punishment. It was purification. In a culture filled with heroes, the Greeks made sure their heroes faced death too. Heracles, Theseus, and Orpheus all journeyed to the underworld and survived. These weren't just stories of bravery. They were blueprints. They showed that it was possible to cross the boundary, to face the unknown, and maybe even return changed. So why did these stories matter? Because the Greeks believed the underworld shaped the living. What you did in life echoed in death. It wasn't enough to be strong. You had to be just. You had to honor the gods, respect your family, bury the dead. Death wasn't random. It was part of the order of things, and the underworld was the place that held that order together. The map of the afterlife. Imagine dying in ancient Greece. Your body is washed, dressed, and laid out by your family. A small coin is placed under your tongue. That is your fare for Charon, the ferryman of the river Styx. Without it, you can't cross. Your soul would be stuck, forever wandering, unseen and unheard. With payment ready, your spirit steps into Charon's boat and drifts into the mist. You arrive at the gates of the underworld, and there stands Cerberus, the three-headed hound. He doesn't bite unless you try to leave. Like everything here, his role is about boundaries. Then comes judgment. 3 ancient kings, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, listen to your life story. They decide your fate. Most souls go to the Asphodel Meadows. It's neither joyful nor awful, just quiet. The good go to Elysium, where heroes enjoy peace and gentle breezes. The wicked are hurled into Tartarus, a dark pit for eternal punishment. Sisyphus pushes his rock. Tantalus reaches for fruit he'll never eat. But this system had a purpose. The underworld mirrored society. Rewards and punishments taught lessons. Live justly and you might rest. Live poorly and face the results. These beliefs shaped behavior, The dead were honored with rituals, offerings of milk, honey, and wine. Graves were visited, names were spoken, and once a year during the Anthesteria festival, spirits were welcomed back. For 3 days, families honored them. Then, with a firm goodbye, they were sent back below. Philosophers added their own touch. Plato imagined a soul choosing its next life. The underworld became a cycle of learning. Be better and earn peace. For the Greeks, death wasn't doom. It was a time and place of reflection. Likewise, the underworld wasn't a horror story. It was a system of balance, responsibility, and hope. Heroes, hubris, and the paths not meant for mortals. The underworld wasn't just a quiet waiting place. It was a challenge. A destination, yes, but also a warning. And if you were foolish or daring enough to try to walk its halls while still alive, well, that was when the real stories began. The Greeks loved stories of mortals who crossed the line. These weren't just bedtime stories. They were cautionary epics. Don't test the gods, don't play with fate, and never, ever forget your place in the grand design. Take Orpheus. He was a poet, a singer, a man whose music could charm trees and tame wild beasts. But when his wife, Eurydice, died too young, bitten by a snake on their wedding day, Orpheus refused to let her go. He played his lyre, and the world listened, even the gods. Eventually, he made his way to the underworld itself, and his music softened every stone heart there, even Hades and Persephone's. They made a deal. Eurydice could return with him, but he must not look back until they were both safely above ground. Sounds simple, right? But as they climbed, Orpheus couldn't resist. Maybe he doubted. Maybe he feared. Perhaps he just needed to see her. He turned, and in that instant, she vanished forever. It wasn't just a love story. It was a reminder. Even the noblest intentions couldn't change the rules of death. Or how about Heracles? He wasn't afraid of anything. His 12 labors took him across the earth, and yes, even into the depths of Hades. One of his tasks was to capture Cerberus, the fearsome three-headed guardian of the underworld, and bring him to the world above. With no weapons, Heracles wrestled the beast into submission and dragged him to the light. Heracles succeeded, but only because the gods allowed it. Even he, the strongest of mortals, respected the order of things. He went in with humility. That made all the difference. But then there was Theseus. Theseus. He wasn't so lucky. He and his friend Pirithous made a pact to each marry daughters of Zeus. Theseus chose Helen. Yes, that Helen. And kidnapped her. Pirithous chose Persephone. Yes, the queen of the dead. That was bold. Foolish even. They descended into the underworld, but Hades knew trickery when he saw it. He offered them a seat. Literally. They sat and suddenly found themselves bound to the chair of forgetfulness, stuck for eternity. Heracles eventually freed Theseus, but Pirithous was lost forever. What do these stories say? That the underworld wasn't just a place. It was a test, and each tale showed the Greeks, and still show us, something profound about their worldview. That death had rules, that even love and strength had limits, and that breaking the laws of the gods always came at a price. Still, these stories weren't hopeless. They were rich with meaning. They offered glimpses of courage and tragedy, of devotion and loss, and perhaps most importantly, they humanized death. They made the mysterious just a little bit understandable. Even Persephone's story, kidnapped by Hades, made queen of the dead, carried beauty and sorrow in equal measure. Her annual return to her mother, Demeter, signaled spring's arrival. Her descent, winter. Life and death, above and below. Balanced. Greek myths taught that crossing into death was never easy, but they also taught that it was part of something bigger, a divine rhythm, a cosmic pattern, a story everyone would eventually join. These hero myths gave people courage. If Orpheus could sing through shadows, if Heracles could face a beast, if even gods wept at lost love, then maybe death wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the next great adventure. Echoes of the Underworld, how death shaped the living world. To understand how the underworld shaped ancient Greek life, you need to look not just at temples or tombs, but at everything. The Greek worldview wasn't divided cleanly between life and death. Instead, they saw both as intertwined. Every decision, every custom, every value, they were all soaked in ideas about what came after. For the Greeks, the underworld wasn't just where you went. It was always near, just out of sight. Start with how they built their cities. Graves were almost always placed outside city walls, but not too far. The road into town might be lined with stone markers, statues, or carved urns. This wasn't just about space, it was symbolic. Death was part of your journey. You passed reminders of it as you came home, as you left again. The family tomb became a point of pride. Names were etched in marble. Some stones showed carvings of everyday life. A mother holding a child, a man and his dog. These weren't grand, godlike scenes. They were snapshots of what people missed most, and what they hoped would be remembered. Even birth and marriage were wrapped in death's quiet shadow. Women who died in childbirth were sometimes buried with the same honors as fallen warriors. A wedding dress might be placed in a girl's tomb, especially if she died before marrying. These weren't just tragedies, they were symbols. A life interrupted, a promise unfulfilled. And what about daily behavior? Courage in battle, loyalty to family, respect for strangers. These weren't just moral values, they were safeguards for your soul. The underworld, as imagined by the Greeks, rewarded goodness, not in riches or power, but in peace. To live well was to prepare for death, and death, in return, gave meaning to life. Philosophers like Socrates made this clear. In Plato's Phaedo, Socrates claims that true philosophers spend their lives preparing to die, not in gloom, but in pursuit of the soul's purity. He wasn't afraid of death. To him, it was a release, a step closer to truth. Even festivals, food, and theater echoed underworld themes. The Eleusinian Mysteries, secret rites honoring Demeter and Persephone, were some of the most sacred events in Greece. Though we'll never know exactly what took place, we do know this: the initiates left changed. Many believed that participating gave them hope for a better afterlife. Not immortality, but peace. Greek tragedy, too, was filled with ghosts and grief. Think of Euripides' Alcestis, where a woman gives her life for her husband, only to be rescued by Heracles from the underworld. Or the Bacchae, where defying divine orders leads to madness and death. These plays didn't just entertain, they taught about humility, about fate, about reverence for what we don't fully understand. Even ordinary phrases carried weight. To say someone had crossed the Styx wasn't just poetic, it was powerful. A reminder, they'd gone beyond, but not forgotten. In modern Greece today, you can still find echoes of these beliefs. Candlelit shrines, grave offerings of bread or oil, saints and spirits woven into village tales. The names have changed, but the soul of the tradition remains. The ancient Greeks didn't see the underworld as evil. It was part of the cycle. A realm of shadow, yes, but also of order, of justice, and of story. And perhaps that's what made it so lasting. Because in the end, their myths didn't try to erase fear. They met it head-on, with songs and stones, with drama and ritual, with laughter and tears. They honored the unknown, and in doing so, they gave generations a way to face it. So the next time you hear thunder or see the sun slip into the sea, remember, somewhere in the old stories, a soul is crossing the river, heading into a place both mysterious and meaningful, and someone above is lighting a candle, whispering their name. Because in ancient Greece, the dead were never far away, and their stories, they never truly ended. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Greece's amazing mythical beliefs, check out our book, Greek Mythology, a captivating guide to the ancient gods, goddesses, heroes, and monsters. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.